Welcome to my horror story series. Here is the story. The Ghost Ring. About 10 years ago, my parents were leasing a large house while looking for a new home to purchase. I was living in California at the time and had come home to visit for a few weeks. The first night that I was there, something strange happened. I climbed into bed and felt a sharp object sticking me. I felt around under the sheets and, to my surprise, found an open, almost diaper-sized safety pin. I closed it and put it on the nightstand. I forgot about it and went about my business the next day. The next evening, however, I found the safety pin, now open again, hidden beneath the covers in my bed. Knowing quite well that no one in my family was a prankster, I was very perplexed. The next morning, I went into the kitchen and asked, "Okay, who's putting the pin in my bed?" Everyone just looked at each other and said they didn't know what I was talking about. The way my sister and parents looked at each other convinced me that something odd was going on. Then, reluctantly, they all began to tell me about the strange events in the house. My father said that he would hear the front door open and close frequently, and would then hear footsteps down the hall or up the wooden stairs, but no one was there. My mother would hear the door slam, and then a voice imitating my sister's would say, "I'm home," but she wasn't. My brother would hear the garage door open and close mysteriously during the night. Ghostly footsteps on the wooden stairs leading to his apartment over the garage were heard almost every night. My sister first realized the house was haunted when she heard the doors upstairs slamming open and shut at all hours of the night. She decided to move in with a friend as a result. She was alone up there if I wasn't visiting and sleeping in the adjoining bedroom. My parents decided to investigate and started with having the neighbors over for dinner. The attorney and his wife confirmed that there had been a problem with the previous owners and their children. According to the dinner guests, the two small girls refused to stay upstairs in their bedrooms and were terrified of even going up there. Meanwhile, my brother discovered that the house was built on an old family cemetery. My parents finally had all they could take and decided to move when they observed objects moving by themselves, and the ghostly voices became more frequent. As they were getting ready to leave, my father noticed a ring hanging on a nail right beside the door, leading in from the garage. The ring had definitely not been there just a few minutes beforehand. It had a black star sapphire with diamonds in the shape of a crescent. He swears that it was left there by the ghost. My husband now wears the ghost ring. We had it appraised. It was made at the turn of the century from 18 or 20 karat gold, but bears no stamp as such. The diamonds are real and the sapphire is of high quality, resulting in an approximate worth of 1,200 calories. What a wonderful gift from beyond. Next story. Poltergeist activity in a Tenby cottage. I've been following your work for a while, and I wanted to share something that happened to me a few years ago in a little cottage near Tenby, Wales. I've always been intrigued by the paranormal, but living through it is a completely different experience. Back in 2012, I rented a cottage called Gwyneth's Rest for 6 months. It seemed perfect initially, quiet, charming, and tucked away from everything. But almost from the beginning, strange things started happening at first. It was small, objects being moved, a cold chill in certain parts of the house, and that feeling like someone was watching me. Then it escalated. One night, while reading in bed, I heard 3 loud knocks on the beam above me. I tried to ignore it, but then I heard what I can only describe as a faint laugh. It froze me in place. The most terrifying moment came during a stormy night in November. The power went out and I was trying to light a candle when a picture frame flew off the mantel and shattered across the room. Then I saw her, a translucent figure of a woman staring at me with such sadness.
I've never run so fast in my life after I left.
I looked into the history of the place and learned about a woman named Gwyneth Miles who lived there in the 1700s. She had a tragic life, was accused of witchcraft, and died under mysterious circumstances. People say the house has been haunted ever since. I'd love to hear if you've come across similar stories in Tenby or other cottages. Do you think this is an intelligent haunting or maybe something else? Next story. The Train Ghost. This story happened to a workmate of my auntie's in Liverpool's James Street railway station about 3 years ago. It was Valentine's night, and the young husband had decided to take his wife out for a meal to Liverpool. After having had a pleasant evening, the pair went to Liverpool's James Street station to get the last train home. As they sat in the station chatting to each other, the husband noticed that there was a very smartly dressed young lady in a 1940s-style black suit sitting on the same bench as them. From the neatness of her attire, the woman looked as if she worked in an office. However, the man became puzzled when he noticed that she was staring fixedly straight ahead and did not move at all. Just then the train came in, and the strange lady got up first and boarded the train ahead of the couple, who decided to enter the same compartment. As they stepped inside, the husband noticed that the compartment was empty, and there was no other way that the woman could have exited the compartment except to pass by the couple. Frowning, the man asked his wife if she had seen the lady who had sat by them on the bench step into the compartment. Returning his frown, the wife shook her head and asked, "What woman?" The husband replied, "You know, teeny lady who was sitting by us," again looking puzzled. The woman shook her head and denied again that she had seen any woman on the bench. Being a very level-headed person, the husband came to the conclusion that even though he did not believe in ghosts, there had been something very strange indeed about the lady's whole aspect. Maybe, he surmised, with it being Valentine's Day, and with her 1940s style attire, the woman could have been a spirit of a young lover going to meet her fiancé, and perhaps something tragic had happened in that railway station once she had boarded the train. Who knows? James Street Station is a very old station with a lot of history. During the war, for example, people used to go down in its tunnels to shelter from the Nazi bombings. Next story, living on haunted lands. I lived and grew up in a little town called Salome, Arizona, which is about 2 hours west of Phoenix by Wickenburg. My family owns lands there, and we have our own private cemetery as well. Growing up, my grandfather built the house that we lived in. From the time I can recall, we lived with ghosts. Things moving, things being thrown around, sounds you could not explain, lights that would travel in the middle of the desert without any form of explanation. The house has since been torn down because it fell into disrepair, but the land stands and it's just as disturbing as it was then, if not more. Something is there, and it wishes nothing more than to be heard. I'm not sure why. Now, I am a pretty gifted empath. I'm not saying I'm psychic at all. But going back thereafter, I've been touched by this gift. It was like smothering. The land itself was sucking the life from others. As strange as that sounds. For instance, when I was about 5, I had the flu really bad. My mother was outside tending to laundry and I was in the front-most bedroom. There were only 2 bedrooms, but I was in the one that was furthest away from where she was. We didn't have built-in closets because my grandparents were from Ireland, so we had freestanding closets that came about a foot away from the wall itself, and I, of course, having the flu, had a fever so bad. My mother left the closet door open, and when the door to the outside closed from my mother,
Out stepped the head and torso of my great-grandmother.
at least I think it was. I never met her. only had a picture of her face hanging in our living room. I could feel her sit on the side of my bed, and when she touched my forehead, I could feel the coolness of her fingers.
I could have sworn she was real. And she whispered to me, "Everything is going to be all right." And I closed my eyes a moment later, and I heard my mother come in and sit with me. And when I finally fell asleep after being so afraid to do so,
I woke and my fever was gone. That was just one example of what happened there. Next story, Ouija board and the girl ghost. When I was quite young, maybe 3 or 4, I saw my first ghost. I was sleeping and awoke suddenly because I had to use the restroom. I turned over and saw a little girl. This little girl looked somewhat like me, but had no color at all.
white as the snow. I could not see through her, though.
She smiled and reached out to me.
I screamed and ran to my mother.
My father never believed me, but my mother secretly did. When I was 14, I held a séance with 6 of my friends and one friend's young sister. Everything was going as planned, and we had all the necessary materials. An athame, salt, chalice of juice, altar, Ouija board, everything. Our candles were lit, and we were proceeding to talking to a presumed spirit through the Ouija board. All of a sudden, the room went black, as if someone had blown all the candles out. A mirror fell behind us, shattered. The windows started to rattle and banging sounded on the door. The youngest girl started to cry, saying something was hurting her. Finally, the light came back and we blew out the candles, closed the circle, and left. Next story, The Mango Tree's Secret. When I was a kid, life was simple. Dusty streets, endless games, and laughter that stretched until the sun disappeared. Our house was flanked by tall mango trees, their gnarled branches twisting like ancient hands reaching for the sky.
Those trees were my playground, my castle. At 10 years old, I didn't know much about the supernatural.
Ghosts were just stories meant to make kids behave until the night I saw her. It started as any other evening. My friends and I were playing beneath the trees, our shouts and laughter cutting through the growing darkness. As the shadows deepened, I felt a chill. Not from the air, but from something else. Something wrong. That's when I saw her. Perched high on one of the branches was a girl, around 12 years old. She wore a white dress, simple but oddly pristine, as though untouched by the dirt and dust of the world. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders, catching the faint glow of the streetlight.
At first, I thought she was just another kid.
Then I realized she had no face. The skin where her features should have been was smooth, blank. She sat with her legs dangling, feet brushing the air, and one hand repeatedly stroking her hair. Her head tilted slightly as though listening to us, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my friends. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. Something about her was magnetic, like staring into a nightmare you couldn't escape. "What are you looking at?"
One of my friends asked, nudging me hard enough to snap me out of my daze. I pointed to the branch. "That girl," I whispered. "What girl?" "She's sitting right there,"
I said louder, my voice shaking. They all looked where I pointed, but their faces remained blank.
"There's nothing there," one said, laughing nervously before running off. But she was still there,
Still stroking her hair.
still swinging her legs like she didn't have a care in the world. "Come inside."
My yaya called sharply from the doorway, her voice cutting through the eerie moment. Reluctantly, I turned toward the house, but before I stepped inside, I glanced back. The girl was no longer looking at my friends. She was facing me. Even without a face, I knew she was watching. I bolted inside, my heart racing. When I told my yaya what I'd seen, Her face went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth, and for a moment she just stared at me. Then, like a switch, she snapped into action.
"It's nothing," she said quickly, her voice tight. "Just your imagination."
Don't talk about it anymore. That night I heard her whispering to my parents. She saw her, she said in a shaky voice. What did I see? I asked, stepping into the room. My parents turned to me with forced smiles.
"Nothing," my dad said.
It's just the shadows playing tricks on you. Forget about it. I wanted to believe them. But the way my Yaya's hands trembled, the way my mum's voice wavered, it wasn't nothing. Years later, when I was older, my brother told me the truth. He had seen her too. She's always been there, he said, his voice low. The girl in the mango tree.
"I saw her when I was your age."
So did Dad. They just don't want us to talk about it. They think ignoring her will make her go away. Did she ever move?
I asked. "No," he said, his face pale.
But once I thought I heard her laugh. The mango trees are gone now, replaced by concrete and steel. But the memory of that girl, her faceless head, tilted as though she was watching, still haunts me. She wasn't just a shadow or a trick of the light. She was real, and she was waiting for something. Maybe she still is. Next story, a New York ghost story. My own experience of a ghost occurred in the particularly unspooky location of Manhattan's Upper West Side in New York City. I had travelled from the UK, visiting friends on mine who had an apartment near to Central Park in a typical New York brownstone. For those unfamiliar with brownstones, these are the ubiquitous four-story houses built around the turn of the century in what was then Manhattan's suburbs to house the large families of the New York middle classes and their servants. By the 1950s, these had almost all been converted into apartments. My friend's apartment was a small one-bedroom affair 3 floors up. I slept on a sofa bed in their living room. The only window in the room had a roll-down blind which was illuminated from outside by a street lamp that cast an orange light onto the blind. It was my first night in New York, and as I was still on UK time, I awoke bright as a button at 4 a.m. As I lay there wondering what to do for the next 4 hours, I noticed that something had obscured the light from the window. Looking up, I saw a dark silhouette sharply outlined and moving slowly across the window from left to right, with its arms raised above its head, rather like it was swinging on monkey bars. There was no drop in temperature or oppressive atmosphere in the room, and my first thought was that it was a burglar on the exterior fire escape. In order to deter anyone outside, I switched on the nearest lamp and read a book until the morning. The next day, I mentioned the cat burglar to my friends, who told me that there was no fire escape on the building. I then spent some time examining the window where I'd seen the silhouette. Apart from no fire escape, there was also no exterior drain pipe on that wall, and the outside window ledge was no more than a couple of inches deep. The street lamp opposite was about 40 feet away, and was not obscured by trees or anything that could cause a shadow like the one I had seen. 2 years later, I went to visit again, and on this occasion, my friends were hosting a farewell party for everyone in the block as they were about to move house. I mentioned my experience at the party and was amazed to hear that almost everyone who lived there had seen a dark silhouette in their own apartments at some time. They all agreed that it was not threatening or even very frightening, and were quite proud of their
live-in ghost. One of the neighbors
had done a bit of research on the property and had discovered that the jazz singer Billie Holiday had lived in the building in the early 1950s and was certain that it was Billie's ghost dancing through the house. Although by that time the property was already apartments, and it seems unlikely to me that she would be interested in roaming the whole house. Next story. Shadow Man followed me. It all started with my mother. She is very receptive towards ghosts or entities. A lot happened to her, but anyway, I guess the first sign I had, not consciously for sure, was when she was pregnant of me. She was looking at her belly in the mirror when she saw that shadow ghost standing behind her. She told me that story when I was about 15, experienced it by myself. All along with my childhood, I saw those shadow ghosts in my house. It's always inside a house. They have many forms, but the most common is the shadow man, exactly like a human, but no face, no clothes, just a very thick shadow. What I mean is that I can't see through them, staring at it, and then me runs away. Vanish must be the right word. The shadow man never approached me. It was always where I could see it, but too far to attempt to approach it. And even if at that time it would have been
close enough, I was too scared to try.
Time passed, and then I moved on my own. For about 1 month, nothing happened in my new apartment, and I thought that maybe that entity was related to me.
Parents' house and would never leave that place.
I went to have supper with my parents, and my mother told me that she heard somebody crying for days after I left. She was trying to tell the spirit that I was gone and that it was time for him to leave too, and that's what he did. The problem is that he followed me in my new apartment. One night I woke up to see the shadow man leaning over my bed, his face at about 2 inches of mine.
That scared the hell out of me. He was much too close. He then vanished away.
Then it took various forms. The man was still there, but there was also the cat and the cloud. Other people have seen the cat too.
I say the cat because it's about the same height and it moves fast. Usually it just crosses the room.
And I had witnesses for that sort of apparition, which was quite comforting, seeing that I was not crazy. And I must say, those people were complete skeptics. The cloud comes in now and then. This one is a little bit weird because it goes really slowly.
It's a very dark cloud, very opaque.
And the curious thing, and hard to explain, is that it does not spread away. It moves like a cloud but does not grow, like a big dark goat that is floating.
That too vanishes away. I just don't know who is that person. If it was a person before he became that way and what he wants from me.
I've seen other ghosts who were peopling that and knew and died. I just don't think that this shadow person is related to me in a way that I knew her or him in her life. They just really scare me. Next story, a New York ghost story. My own experience of a ghost occurred in 1998 in the particularly
unspooky location of Manhattan's Upper West
Side in New York City. I had travelled from the UK, visiting friends on mine who had an apartment near to Central Park in a typical New York brownstone. For those unfamiliar with brownstones, these are the ubiquitous 4-story houses built around the turn of the century in what was then Manhattan suburbs to house the large families of the New York middle classes and their servants. By the 1950s, these had almost all been converted into apartments. My friend's apartment was a small 1-bedroom affair 3 floors up.
I slept on a sofa bed in their living room.
The only window in the room had a roll-down blind which was illuminated from outside by a street lamp that cast an orange light onto the blind. It was my first night in New York, and as I was still on UK time, I awoke bright as a button at 4 a.m. As I lay there wondering what to do for the next 4 hours, I noticed that something had obscured the light from the window. Looking up, I saw a dark silhouette sharply outlined and moving slowly across the window from left to right, with its arms raised above its head, rather like it was swinging on monkey bars. There was no drop in temperature or oppressive atmosphere in the room, and my first thought was that it was a burglar on the exterior fire escape. In order to deter anyone outside, I switched on the nearest lamp and read a book until the morning. The next day, I mentioned the cat burglar to my friends, who told me that there was no fire escape on the building. I then spent some time examining the window where I had seen the silhouette. Apart from no fire escape, there was also no exterior drain pipe on that wall, and the outside window ledge was no more than a couple of inches deep. The street lamp opposite was about 40 feet away, and was not obscured by trees or anything that could cause a shadow like the one I had seen. 2 years later, I went to visit again, and, on this occasion, my friends were hosting a farewell party for everyone in the block as they were about to move house. I mentioned my experience at the party and was amazed to hear that almost everyone who lived there had seen a dark silhouette in their own apartments at some time. They all agreed that it was not threatening or even very frightening, and were quite proud of their
living ghost. One of the neighbors
had done a bit of research on the property and had discovered that the jazz singer Billie Holiday had lived in the building in the early 1950s and was certain that it was Billie's ghost dancing through the house, although by that time the property was already apartments, and it seems unlikely to me that she would be interested in roaming the whole house. Next story. Did the shadow people come for me? This happened when I was 18 years old. I'm now 30, and I still remember this story with great clarity. When I was young, I was a tad stupid.
I used to bonnet surf.
If you don't know what that is, it's when you stand or sit on a bonnet of a car while it is moving. Anyway, I was half sitting, half kneeling on the bonnet of my mate's car. He kept going faster, and instead of telling him to slow down, I just laughed. It was fun, I'll admit. It went out of control and the car crashed and flipped over, crushing part of me. I went unconscious and came back again. I was lying on the ground in a pool of my blood in tremendous pain. The car was off me and there were police sirens around me. Suddenly I saw at the end of the street a black figure. It started off small, but as it kept coming toward me, it kept getting bigger and bigger until it was dominating my vision. It was the shape of a person in a black cloak, and as it kept coming nearer and nearer, I kept swearing at it, telling it to go away. The medics thought I was losing it and pumped me with morphine. I lost consciousness then and woke up in the hospital. A week and a bit later, I was still banged up pretty bad, but getting better.
One night I was sleeping in my hospital room and I suddenly jerked awake.
Standing near the window was the figure in the black cloak. I was completely scared that I was frozen stiff. Suddenly the figure raced across the room and out the door.
I swear to God, as soon as the figure passed my bed, I felt my body weaken.
It was like my spirit was being pulled out of my body and then sunk back in again. My body actually came up from the bed when that happened. The next day I was still a little shook up, but excited because I was being shifted out of ICU, which meant that I was going to live. I noticed that my usually happy nurse was a tad quiet and looked sad that morning. When I asked her what was wrong, she told me that one of her patients across the corridor from me had passed away last night. You can imagine what I thought. Next story. The Angel of Death High. My name is Stephanie and I would like to share a very scary experience that happened over 20 years ago. I was sitting in the living room of my grandmother's house one day, along with her and my aunt. All of a sudden I saw this large black shadow rise up out of the floor of the porch and swing itself around and leap over the side of the wall and disappear into the ground. At first, no one could speak or move. My grandmother started to cry and my aunt was scared, and so was I. My other aunt came in from the kitchen and told us we were nuts, and nothing was there. She said something must have flew past the glass doors. My father finally got there, and my grandmother was still upset and told him what had happened. She told how worried she was because 2 weeks before that, her ex-husband, who lived 2 houses up from her, killed himself because he suffered from cancer. My dad told my mom not to get so upset because it was nothing to worry about. How I wish that was true, because not more than 2 weeks later,
My father passed away. Every time I think about it, I still get spooked. I am not sure if anyone will believe me.
but I know it's true, and I just wanted to share what happened to me.